I want to thank all of you for being here. It's an honor for me to be here today at this fabulous facility. I want to thank Dean Gilbert, the USM College of Business, the Trent Lott Center, and the sponsor today, the Comcast Foundation, for putting this on. On September the 4th was the day the ribbon was cut for this building. I was on the Capital Campaign Committee to help raise the money, and my classmate Chuck Sienna, that this building is named after, made our job very easy. He came up with well in excess of $6 million. Our job was to raise $10 million. Chuck made us all look like geniuses, but thank God to Chuck. And if those of you who have not met him, he is a legend in his own right. You need to meet him. He is a wonderful human being and a very humble and very, very successful person. Some people in the audience here today, Gwen James, would you raise your hand where people can see you? Gwen serves on the Mississippi Real Estate Commission with me and does a fantastic job in storied career. Also, Don Nace. Don is probably the reason I'm here. He taught real estate courses, and I'll say more about Don in just a few minutes. But things on campus have changed a tremendous amount since I've been here, since I was here in the early 70s. The former business building, the Joseph Green Hall, was relatively new when I was here. That was a new building. I said, wow, what a nice building. Now look at this, and gosh, there's no comparison. Elam Arms, the building, the dormitory where I lived on my freshman year, was a fairly new building in those days, and it's since been demolished. It was actually condemned prior to the tornadoes that hit here not long ago, and I think probably me and the folks who were there probably had a lot to do with that early demise. The wear and tear on that building was unnecessary. I wear a relic on my hand here. This is the University of Southern Mississippi class ring, class of 1975, and it was the last year that it said Southerners on it. The next year, all the class rings said Golden Eagles, so that kind of dates me pretty bad. And one last thing for perspective, Dr. William McCann was the president when I was here. His last spring graduation was the year I graduated, 1975. He was followed by a young whippersnapper by the name of Dr. Aubrey K. Lucas, who took his place, and that's who our administration building is named after now. I received an excellent education here, and I'll always be indebted to the wonderful instructors and hundreds of many friends that I've made, lifelong good friends, and lessons learned both academically and otherwise. I wanted to relate one story that happened. I was a business law class out at Stout Hall, the auditorium type thing like this. Ben West, who was a local attorney, but he also was a business law professor, I never could understand. I was telling Don Nace earlier, I couldn't tell if he liked me or hated me, but it was, I'll let you decide. October the 12th, 1973, I walked into the Stout Hall, and I was late, and we had assigned seating. My seat was about third row. And he said, Mr. Cumbest, are you okay? And he was very dramatic. I said, oh yeah, yes sir, I'm sorry I'm late. He says, do you mean to tell me that you weren't caught up in the spaceship that landed in Pascagoula last night? Isn't Pascagoula your hometown? I said, yes sir. I said, I I didn't know what he was talking about. I had not even heard about this. So Jimmy Taylor, who I sat by, a lot of y'all know Jimmy Taylor, State Farm agent in Gulfport, Biloxi. I asked Jimmy, I said, what is he talking about? And meanwhile, he was standing on the stage looking at me with his glasses down on his nose and microphone. He had stopped his lecture because I interrupted him. And he said, no, Mark, I really believe, I don't know how you didn't hear about it, but said it was on the national news. Supposedly a spaceship landed in Pascagoula, Mississippi last night, and he said, I just am so happy that you weren't on that spaceship and you could join us here today. And I told him, I said, well, after the class, I said, Dr. West, what happened actually last night about the time the spaceship landed, I was at an establishment down on Highway 49 known as the Stone Toad, and I would have figured that that would have been the most appropriate place for the spaceship to have landed last night. So I missed it altogether. And he said, well, thank God you're okay. And he rolled his eyes, and I got to see. The city has changed dramatically too. When I was here, as most of y'all know, some of people a lot younger than I am. I'm 62, but remember that west of Highway 59 was nothing, very little development. Now that's where the obvious growth is continuing to take place. And I remember that Lake Serene, that whole area just basically consisted of pine trees and dirt roads, and was the scene of the hotspot for romance on campus or off campus. So back in those days, that was its highest and best use, as an appraiser would say. Things have changed a lot, but something that has not changed is my love for this university. When I walk on the campus, and I hope y'all will have the same feeling, those of you who are students, it's a very special place for me. And I remember this building here. I was I think it was 2009, 2010, I was the Business Advisory Council chairman here at the USM College of Business, and it was during that time that the first artist's sketch of the building was unveiled. And I remember that meeting. It was kind of an emotional time because, at long last, our big building, and it just actually surpasses my wildest dreams and most everybody's expectations. The subject of real estate I divide up into three categories, three main areas. One is the profession of the real estate brokerage business and all that goes with that. That's what most people are the most familiar with. The second is, when you mention real estate, I think of real estate investment for your own account, for building your own portfolio in real estate. And that's very, very important. I'm going to talk about that. The third area is what Gwen James and I work on, and that is we are regulators. We make sure people adhere to the laws and the rules on the Mississippi Real Estate Commission and the laws of organized real estate. Mississippi's real estate license law was passed first in 1954, and it continues. And it also is an evolving thing. I've always had an interest in real estate brokerage. When I was a child, I would pass by, I would see these. I thought it was kind of unusual to see a sign on a piece of property with a name on it, an agency's name on it, and it just kind of intrigued me. I said, how do those people make money? How does all this work? And I'd see, if it was an industrial building, it would be on the sign would be bolted to the exterior brick wall. If it was a commercial property, it'd be in the middle of the commercial area there. If it was on a home or a farm, it may be nailed to the fence of a farm or in the neat yard of a residence. And it intrigued me. And I remember, I don't know why this keeps coming back to mind, but as a child I was inquisitive. I would ask, people, my parents, how does this stuff work? I said, well, what you do, you go out and you list a piece of property, and you go, and if you sell the piece of property, you make a percentage of the total price. I said, well, gosh, that could be a lot of money. Yeah, it could be. And the more the property owner makes, the higher the commission is, because it's typically, historically, a percentage commission. My question was, what requirement does the broker have? They said, well, the broker, you just have to pay for the cost of marketing and overhead for your office. And I said, well, do you have to pay the property owner if you don't sell it? No. You don't pay the property owner if you don't sell it. I said, I think that's what I want to do. In 1974, I was a student here at Southern Miss. My major was real estate and insurance. My major at that time was general business. And I had taken some real estate classes under my friend Don Nace here, and real estate principles. I was really interested in that. And I remember, I don't know if this still happens being ignored or not, I'm sure it does, but you have your academic advisors, and you go in, you have a consultation with your academic advisors. And I did that when it came that time for my meeting with Don, and really enjoyed his classes. He added some spark to it, that kind of got everybody excited about the business. And he told me, he says, if you change your major right now to real estate and insurance, you will not lose 1 quarter hour. We're on a quarter system back in those days. If you wait till next semester, you're going to be your stuff's going to have to go as electives. So I thought about it about 4 or 5 seconds, and I said, let's do it. And that was the day that I decided I would become a real estate broker. And I'm indebted to Don for that, because had he not encouraged me to pursue that, I needed that little extra nudge. So what I did, I took my real estate salesperson's examination, studied for that over the summer in 1974 between my junior and senior year. Was sponsored by a company in Pascagoula. And then I came back here the fall semester to start my senior year. And there again, my major was real estate and insurance. That was what it was called in those days. It combined real estate and insurance. But the emphasis for me was on real estate. I took very little insurance classes because I couldn't understand Dr. Hamway, who was from Damascus. And I just had a hard time. I mean, God bless him. He was very, very smart, but I really had a hard time understanding him. But he was very smart. He knew what he was doing. But anyway, my interest was with real estate. But so I graduated from Southern Miss, business administration with a major in real estate insurance in May of 1975. This coincided with the 1 year that I had taken the calendar year which had passed, which was the requirement, and still is the requirement, to get a broker's license. That was my goal, was to get a broker's license, and I got that set for my broker's exam. And because of the outstanding education I got here at Southern Miss, at that point, I know Don and Gwen probably remembers this, that I was the only person ever to have made a perfect score on the Mississippi Real Estate Broker's exam. Got a lot of good publicity for that. It opened up my business on September the 1st, 1975. And it's a decision that I never have regretted. There's nothing in this world I would rather do than what I'm doing. From there, it's been a very interesting journey for me. I've seen many dramatic changes in the real estate business, most of them for the better. There have been many times of prosperity and favorable real estate markets, But the question I'm always asked the most frequently is, what was the toughest? What was the worst? What was the most challenging time in your career? And it is absolutely no question. For me, it was the early 1980s. Interest rates were between 17, going anywhere from 17% interest was a good deal. Now, to show you today, I mean, we're at 3 and 4%, 3 and 4 and 5% today. But in those days, it just made affordability for housing absolutely impossible. People were dropping out of the real estate business like flies. The commercial rates were even higher than that. Getting a loan was just suicide. So during that period of time, there was a movement across the United States, and I was one of the people involved. It was actually officially called the creative real estate movement, and actually it turned, if you're in a real estate business and you can't get mortgages, your commission payments, fees that you make are pretty much based upon being able to get a person financed. And when that doesn't happen, when that does not happen, you got problems. You got to get in another business or let the house go back, your house go back to the bank. So the creative real estate thing, I started reading book after book, many books. I've got some, hope I don't forget to give you some books, some suggestions for reading. This meant a lot in my life, but I was the vice president. I was elected vice president of an organization we started called MORE, M-O-R-E, is the Mississippi Organization of Realty Exchangers. These were springing up in each state. Florida had FREE, the Florida Real Estate Exchangers. Tennessee had TREE, the Tennessee Real Estate Exchangers. Louisiana had LORE. Anyway, then we would have national conferences in the spring. We would have national conferences in Las Vegas, and in the fall we would have conferences in Orlando. And it was one of the most exciting times of my career, because you really were, this was off, abused term, but you had to think out of the box there to be able to put these deals together. My business changed primarily from brokerage to investing in my own account, which was a blessing, because what I did and what the emphasis for creative real estate is, you would buy, it was such a risky, high-risk thing. I would not want to expose my clients to this high rate of risk, because it was very, very risky. But a lot of the brokers across the country in those days would begin building their portfolio, and they would trade. They would use the tax laws, and we would, the legal tax laws, and we would trade, and we would, this is all legit. I mean, all attorneys would handle it. Many attorneys participated in it, in our own account. And, I acquired apartment complexes, duplexes, many single-family homes that the key was in two keys: income producing and fixed rate underlying mortgages. That was, and this was way before the bubble burst. We're talking way before 2008. But I mean, this is all legit. To give you an idea how things were in those days, I had a goal. I was going to own 30 single-family houses, and I was going to pay the mortgages. I would depreciate the houses. It was accelerated depreciation in those days. The properties were cash flowing. The rent exceeded the cost of the insurance, the taxes, and the mortgage, because the mortgage was low. Keep that in mind. You wanted to keep that low mortgage on it, because if you can assume a 7% mortgage and the market rate is 19% that day, you've made money already by acquiring something. So what you used for equity is your assets, whatever assets. I had this is a small example. I mean, this is a small scale example, but I had a 1977 International Scout 4-wheel drive, which was a pretty nice vehicle in those days. I mean, it sounds old, but it would get you around in the woods. And guy approached me and he says, listen, how much you want for that? You want to sell that Scout? And I says, no, I'll trade it. He said, what do you want? I said, I want a house. I'm looking for another house. He said, look, I'll give you a house. I've got a house that's got a renter in it. I just renovated it, fixed it up, and it was renting for market, actually a little above market, long-term lease. And I told him, I said, I'll give you the keys to this. I'll give you the title. You give me that, and I'll assume your note. He said, will you do that? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. We did that. I sold the house when the market got back. When the market got better, it really, I'm not bragging, but I really, things really fell my way in those days when things were, when it came time to sell. And then what you do, you don't set, you exchange it. You do a 1031 tax deferred exchange, and I could spend a week talking about that, but I'm just going to move on ahead, and I'm going to have a question and answer session in a little while. I'll be glad to entertain some questions, but what I'll do, I'll leave a stack of my business cards here, and anybody that has any question about anything I'm talking about, I'm accessible. Call me. I'm available. Email, text, call, whatever, but I'll leave the business cards with Dean Gilbert. In the mid-'80s, the market corrected itself. We got back to normal real estate business. I never did really like residential real estate a whole lot because it was just everybody else was doing it. The fees, quite frankly, were lower than what I wanted to make, and anyway, but it was what everybody else was doing. So I decided I would pursue the industrial and commercial. Not that many people were dealing in industrial real estate, commercial real estate, large acreage parcels, so I started working on what I like to do, which is that. But then I managed about 13 agents that were working in the residential thing. So I was working myself to death, quite frankly, but it was fun. I was, making good money. And I decided that I needed to specialize. I needed to go ahead and make specialize. What I really enjoyed was selling large tracts of land, farms, recreational property, transitional properties where an interstate has come through, and you can either list the property or get an option on the property. And so I made the conscious decision in 1979 to join, in 1980 actually, to join the Realtors Land Institute, and I got my accredited land consultant designation. I was the youngest in the country to get the accredited land consultant designation in 1983. And I still have my accredited land consultant designation. I was national president of the Realtors Land Institute a long time ago, but our board of realtors had a program called the Top Producer Awards, and every year, not every year, 11 out of the 15 years we had that, we discontinued it. I'm the one that recommended we discontinue because it was causing hard feelings, probably jealousy. It's true. I mean, it was not good, not a good thing. The 11 out of the 15 years I was a top commercial producer. Well, that's good, but the field of the people who were doing the commercial production, there weren't a lot of us. But anyway, we had some of my clients over the years that have been very good to, and God bless every one of them, is Chevron, Northrop Grumman, Georgia Pacific Corporation, Kimberly-Clark. A lot of the tenants we've dealt with have been Xerox, C-Spire, and I'll never forget, I was interviewed by an international paper company back in the early mid-'80s, and went to Jackson for the interview. They were interviewing brokers to handle a geographical area, well, actually basically South Mississippi, and I went up and met with a guy by the name of Mike Palmer in Natchez, And we did the interview, and he said, did I see you bring in one of those cell phones, cellular telephones? I said, yeah. I said, I've got one of those. He said, you got one of those? I said, yeah. I said, this is, you know, you need to think about it. It's expensive, but it's and it's big and bulky, but it's, you know, it's kind of handy. It might make you some money. And he told me, he said, I'll never forget it. He said, you're hired. I said, yeah, but we haven't even finished he said, you're hired. Okay, good. I said, why? I mean, what convinced you? And he says, well, he says, I look for in my real estate agents what Coach Eddie Robinson looks for in his Grambling football players. I said, what? He says, you must be agile, you must be mobile, and you must be hostile. I said, hey, look, I'll take it. And that was a blessing to me that I cannot, it just came at the right time in my life, raising kids. I was having children at that time, and the kids were, you know, the priority, but it sure made it better where I could not have to work so hard to be able to spend time with them. In 2005, I was appointed by Governor Haley Barbour of the Mississippi Real Estate Commission, and I represent the 4th Congressional District. Now, Gwen over there is the at-large. You're the at-large member, aren't you, Gwen? And you folks in South Mississippi are getting 2 for 1 because you've got 2 South Mississippi people on a 5-man board, a 5-person board, and Gwen does a great job. Our job there is to regulate almost 12,000 real estate licensees in the state of Mississippi, and this includes approving educational courses for being able to take the license, continuing education courses to maintain your license. We oversee the licensing, real estate testing. We we administer penalties to those who break the Mississippi real estate license law rules, and conduct hearings, and we hear complaints made against other real estate licensees. And I know I can probably speak for Gwen. We have heard some doozies lately, haven't we? I didn't know people could be so greedy, but we were trying to keep that in check. The umbrella of the real estate commissions and governing boards, which most states have, is an organization known as ARELO, the Association of Real Estate License Law Officials. I know Gwen and I are going up to Atlanta a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, to the ARELO meeting there. Last year, in 2014, I was the national chairman of the Fair Housing Committee of ARELO, and that was something I was proud of. We revamped the system by which fair housing laws are monitored by real estate commissions, and we streamlined it. We worked with the John Marshall Law School in Chicago. We put in a lot of work to it, and it's one of the best things that's ever happened, I think, in ARELO. I was just glad to be at the helm. I can't take credit, but it was just, I was in the right place at the right time on that one. Another event took place in 2005 was Hurricane Katrina. We can remember that. That deadly storm. Everybody knows about Katrina. Everybody has their Katrina stories. But what I remember about it is the governor, I was one of 2 real estate brokers, real estate agents who were on that committee. It was a 40-person committee, the Governor's Commission for Recovery, Rebuilding, and Renewal. And it was a terrible time. We all had suffered tremendous losses ourselves, but we were all, we'd volunteered to do this, to go and sit in these charrette sessions and meet for day and night to try to get things planned for a report that the governor's report that he would submit, the governor's commission report, that was the end product that was done by, deadline was December 31st of 2005. And we got it. I was on the land use committee, and I thank God I look back, and a lot of that was implemented. We formed the Gulf Coast Business Council to implement those things, and a lot of the things, I mean, as bad as Katrina was, it was, there were some good things that came out of it. And we cleaned up a lot of, I think about, driving down Highway 90 in Biloxi, these god-awful, adult film, peep show crap and all that, and that's gone. It's just a better, much better deal, but much better family-friendly communities there. But 11 of the coast cities were either completely destroyed, like Waveland, or just tremendously damaged. And I was just, I will always look back at that. That's probably the best, that was probably the highest unpaid position I've ever had. Let me just put it that way. Also, I want to talk to y'all about, how many, by show of hands, of you students are in the school, I guess you are all in the school of business, right? Most of the students? Okay. I just want to I won't ask you your major or whatever, but I want to put this word in for real estate, for the college, for the School of Real Estate here at USM. You may not know this, but it's my understanding that Mississippi State used to have a real estate department. University of Mississippi, Ole Miss had one, but it's my understanding that we're the only one. Is that correct? Are we the only accredited real estate school in the state of Mississippi right now? And I just want to tell you that that's something to be proud of. I mean, that's partly hearsay, but I understand I've confirmed it with some folks. But why real estate? Why would you want to get into real estate? I will tell you this. The reason I've been through this laborious, explanation of what it's done for me and how I've enjoyed it is look out the window. It is a glorious day. I make good money. I'm my own boss. The weather report, the weather forecast is what dictates what I do. Today, if I were not making this talk right now, I'd be out either showing a piece of property, listing a piece of property, meeting with an appraiser, anything outdoors. When it's rainy, when it's cold or freezing, which is not very often, I do all my inside work. I do all my outside work on a day like today because it's too glorious to be stuck in a cubicle, in an office cubicle. Even though if I had a choice of being paid $500 an hour in a office cubicle, day in, day out, monotonous job, versus what I do for a pittance, I'd do what I do. And I just don't see why more people don't do it. You can make it if you're motivated, if you're self-motivated, which I am, and y'all are. It can be. It's an alternative that I really don't understand why more people don't get into it, because you do. There are so many fields and so many specialties within the umbrella of real estate. you could pick out what you want. If you like houses, be a residential specialist. If you like commercial, go for your CCIM, that's commercial investment member designation. Be the guru of commercial. For me, it was accredited land consultant. I'm happy as a lark being an accredited land consultant. There's not many of them around. You got people that do management. You do real estate management, real estate syndications, real estate securities and syndications. So there are many fields within the field of real estate that I would like to encourage you to at least investigate. And I want to, how are we doing on time? 5 minutes? Okay, good. Perfect. We're going to take some questions and answers, but I want to tell you some books. I've got two sons, and one's about to get his Keller Williams license. I know that's an ugly word, Don, but anyway, in Texas. But and the other one is still in college, getting his computer science degree. But I want to tell you, I want to recommend some reading to you, for you. Our videographer today is Francisco Gonzalez with Gonzaflex. He's the best there is. He does movies. He's a cinematographer. I just am grateful for him to come out here today and do this. Usually he's shooting movies or television shows. I mean, he's a big time, big guy down, especially on the in the Gulf Coast area, and I want to thank him for being here today. But he was telling me that last week he was doing the videography for the Keller Williams big convention in New Orleans, and he videoed Gary Keller of Keller Williams, and he's a hero of mine. I mean, Gary Keller is a really good, and I was going to kid Francisco and tell him that, look, you videoed Gary Keller last week. You're videoing Mark Cumbest this week. Mark, Gary does not hold a candle to Mark Cumbest. Okay, let's make it clear. I'm kidding. Believe me, he's the only one laughing. The one thing, this is a book I recommend. Gary Keller wrote. It says the surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results. This is an excellent book, and I recommend, even if you're not interested in real estate, you need to read that book. Another one that I've gotten from my kids, and this is one by Robert J. Morgan. It's Mastering Life Before It's Too Late. I just see people coasting through life, and they're 60 years old, and they still don't know what they want to do. You need to read this book, Mastering Life by Robert J. Morgan. Now, love him or hate him, the 1988 book written by the Donald, The Art of the Deal, is an excellent book. Anybody that gets, if you're even thinking about getting into real estate, and if you're even thinking about thinking bigger, you need to buy this book. I saw the Donald recently, and he signed it for me. But the last one, and this is something that I don't want to get into off the subject too much, but I read it for 31 years. 31 consecutive years I've read this book from start to finish, and I can highly recommend it. It is amazing, the business applications that's in this book. It's called the Holy Bible. And it is amazing. You need to read it. I don't care what your faith is or if you even have a faith, but it is amazing the accuracy that this book possesses. And I just want to tell you that because it's been a blessing. I read mine this morning. But I want to, at this point, open it up for any questions that anybody may have. Feel free to what time, let me say this, we've got another meeting at the Trent Light Center in a few minutes, but we've got time to take some questions. I mean, we'll stay here as long as we can, and then, but like I said, I'll leave several of my business cards with whoever, you may be going, you're going over there, aren't you? So I'll leave them on this table.